Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello, dear students. Welcome to another lecture. In this class, we are going to continue with Alternative English, Class 12, Nagaland Board. The fiction that we are studying is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And in the last lecture, we talked about the greatest revelation in the story, that the benefactor, the patron that Pip was so far presuming was Miss Havisham, was actually Abel Magwitch, who was the convict Pip helped when he was a child, and the convict was so impressed by his nobility then that he decided to work hard, to earn money, and to spend on Pip becoming a gentleman. His name was Abel Magwitch, but he wanted to live with Pip as Provis. He also confirmed the same from Mr. Jaggers, and the same was very well validated. Let us continue further to read what happened thereon. So Pip took Provis back to a room he had rented for him and then returned to the temple where he was living with Herbert. Herbert was very scared of Provis, and the two made a plan to get rid of the convict. Herbert wanted his friend Pip to get free from this man whom he knew was going to be very dangerous and risky in his life. Pip did not want to risk angering this convict in London, in this England, where he would be very aggressive and very quick in action, and he wanted him to get arrested. Rather, he wanted him to go out of the country where he and Provis will try, and he was going to talk about his feelings to Provis, and in the meantime he will stop accepting the money from Provis and will forego. He's going to leave behind whatever expectations he had, and also thought that gradually he was going to pay whatever money Provis had sent him and gave him so far. Now Pip then decided that he would become a soldier, since he was not trained for any trade. He did not get any specialized training, if you remember. Now at breakfast the next day, Pip and Herbert asked Provis to talk about his past, and Provis told them that he grew up as an orphan on the streets and he would commit small crimes to survive, and 20 years ago he met a very rich, educated gentleman whose name was Compeyson, again an important character in the story. So his name was Compeyson, and who was a forger. He was a cheat, he was a counterfeiter, and was the man Pip saw Provis wrestling in the marshes. So he was the same man whom convict fought with in the marshes before they were both arrested. Compeyson had employed Provis, had asked Provis to work under him and help him in his crimes. He was always making him overwork but not paying him the money that he deserved for his hard work. Compeyson and his partner, the name of whom was Arthur, they schemed a large amount of money to be extracted from a rich woman, but Compeyson had actually lost the entire money in gambling. When Provis met him, Arthur was very sick and he was scared of hallucinations that he was getting about that woman who they knew was going to take a revenge from them and was going to kill them. Compeyson also unsympathetically reminded Arthur that she was the kind who would actually kill somebody. And Arthur was so paranoid, he was so scared of that woman that he died hallucinating of that woman. When Provis and Compeyson were arrested for this crime, for this forgery, Compeyson insisted that they would have no communication with each other thereafter. And Provis also sold everything to hire Mr. Jaggers. So in the court, Compeyson's lawyer talked about how gentle he was and that he had a good upbringing. And Provis, on the other hand, was rough, belonged to a lower class, and had the record of small crimes. Compeyson received a lighter sentence because he had a good character and a bad company. In the prison, Provis managed to hit Compeyson before escaping. Compeyson also escaped and thinking that he was running away from Provis without realizing that Provis was already on the shore. So Compeyson did not know that Provis had already run away from the prison. After hearing of the other man from Pip, Provis found that it was Compeyson and beat him up and determined to drag him back to the prison, even if he will have to forego his own freedom. Provis he did not know at present whether Compeyson was alive or not. Herbert gave Pip a note telling him that Miss Havisham's brother's name was Arthur and that her fiance's name was Compeyson. So this woman whom they had cheated was Miss Havisham. The man who had cheated her was Compeyson, and Arthur was the step brother of Miss Havisham. So see, the connections, the relations in the story are all unfurling. Now, Pip decided to see Estella and Miss Havisham before he invited Provis to go abroad. Now, he was told at Richmond that Estella had gone to Satyr's house, that is her own house, and Pip suddenly had that uneasy kind of a feeling, and, he somehow had a very smug kind of a feeling in that time. Now, Pip went back to the village to visit Satyr's house and was surprised to run to meet Bentley Drummle at the Blue Boar. They actually had a fight, and they both, were basically fighting because of Estella. She was the only reason of row between them. And Drummle was showing off his wealth, his power, by calling the waiter to discuss his plans with the lady. So the lady here was obviously Estella. Pip went to Satyr's house and explained to Miss Havisham and Estella that he had met his patron, but he did not tell them who he was. He asked Miss Havisham to confirm 4 things to him. 1. When Pip began visiting her, did she consider him as a servant and had no other desires for her? B. It was only a coincidence that Mr. Jaggers worked for both Miss Havisham and for Pip's patron. Third, when Pip assumed that it was Miss Havisham who was his patron, she also just, moved with the flow. And 4, when Sarah, Pocket, Georgina, Camellia, and Raymond assumed that she was Pip's patron and represented Pip for it, she agreed with them also and let everything just move on. And Miss Havisham confirmed to every damn thing. Pip told Miss Havisham that Matthew and Herbert Pocket, unlike her other relations, were actually good and kind people. Pip told Miss Havisham to believe in them. He also asked her to continue making her investments in Herbert's career because Pip cannot afford to make them. But Miss Havisham did not respond to that. Pip expressed his love for Estella and explained that he had since a very long time, he had controlled himself from expressing that directly because he assumed that Miss Havisham liked him, that Estella was, betrothed to Pip. Estella replied that she was not capable of loving anybody. She does not have the heart, as she had already talked about that. She did not have any sentiments and warned Pip that if he would love her, then she would not be able to revert it to him. Pip told Estella about Drummle. She told Pip that she was going to marry Drummle. And Pip was so disappointed that he begged her to marry someone who was worthy enough, somebody who actually loved her, even though that person was not that good or not that well off. But Estella was not to be affected. She insisted that she would marry Drummle, and she assured Pip that he will get over her, that it would be easy for him to forget her. Pip cried and cried but was never able to get over her, and she has always been and she was always a part of his existence. Miss Havisham watched Pip, cry with her over her heart, and the fact that Miss Havisham actually realized her mistake of motivating Pip to think about Estella on that part. It was Miss Havisham only who continued to tell him, love her, love her, love her. Pip was obviously very disappointed and sad, and he walked back to London alone. Now, at the gate to his home, the porter gave him a note written in Wemmick's hand that told him not to go home. So he was told by Wemmick not to go home. Pip spent a very nervous and a sleepless night at the hotel trying to figure out why did Wemmick ask him not to go home. In the morning, he went to Walworth to meet Wemmick, and Wemmick told him that he wrote the note because he overheard at the Newgate prison that Compeyson knew Provis was in London, and he had been watching Pip's apartment, and Pip connected this news to the stranger who was around his apartment, whom he stumbled over at night. As soon as he heard this news, Wemmick basically took Herbert into confidence to arrange a hiding place for Provis. Herbert had taken Provis to a room in Clara's building, which was along the river. Pip had never been there because Clara does not approve of Herbert's and Pip's friendship, because she thought that it was Pip who was responsible for the debt that Herbert was in. And Wemmick advised Pip to get away from Provis as soon as possible so that he would be able to protect himself.